Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. And yes, go Irish, go Hoosiers, and Boilermakers, everybody. So thanks again for joining us. I'm going to go ahead and I'll share my screen in just a moment. But first, I just dropped the slides in the chat. So yeah, boiler up. Okay. And wherever else you hail from, it's all good stuff. I love seeing in the chat where everyone's coming from. I love seeing all the different positions, instructional designers, faculty members. I saw some librarians, some project managers. So feel free to keep sharing. And as Tom said, definitely use the chat. I will not be monitoring it too much just because there are a lot of you and one of me. But the collective wisdom of everybody here in the group is great. And so take advantage of that for sure. Okay, I'll go ahead and start sharing my slides now. Okay. Thumbs up from someone that we can see. Should be good to go. Anybody? Yes, okay, thanks, Jen. All right. So yes, as Tom said, my name's Brianna. I'm a senior learning designer at Notre Dame. And I work in our Office of Digital Learning, which is part of our Notre Dame Learning. This is an umbrella organization that houses our Caneb Center for Teaching Excellence, as well as we also work really closely with our Teaching and Learning Technologies team, who is technically housed within our Office of Information Technology. But together, we come together as Notre Dame Learning to serve as an academic innovation hub across campus. So the ODL, as we call it, is comprised of learning designers like myself, media producers or editors, and as well as project managers. And while that might not be super unique how we're, what we're comprised of, the way in which we collaborate, I found has been pretty unique. So we've got on every project pretty much a lead learning designer, a lead media person, and a project manager, and we're all involved in pretty much every step of the way. So today, just some of that background will be helpful today, knowing, to inform our conversation. So today we're going to talk about how our collaborative dynamic, evolved when we threw generative AI into the mix. It's also worth noting that our Office of Digital Learning is not called the Office of Online Learning because we do a lot of work with our residential student experiences as well. Probably a bulk of our work actually is the residential student experience. So keep that in mind as well. And I'm going to open this chat window here for myself just so I have it. That will be helpful. So give me 1 second to set this how I want. All right. Sorry, everyone. Thanks. Okay. So I do have a confession to make. I was telling Tom this before we welcomed you all into the room that I have not spoken about AI in a formal way at a conference in I think over a year. And I have actually had a lot of fun at the conferences I have presented at since then saying, oh, I'm not presenting on AI because it's been refreshing to not be the person talking about it, right? But today I'm going to talk about it. So we're going to take a step back at one of our first truly accelerated course design sprints that use generative AI tools. And I'm going to frame expectations early that we're not going to do a lot of live technical demos today. We're really thinking about workflow integrations, team dynamics, and the messy sort of realistic lessons that we learned along the way. But I do hope by the end of our time together, you might be able to identify some practical applications of AI in your learning design and media workflows, or even I do touch on some project management pieces. You might be able to describe a collaborative model that might work for your team for rapid course development, and then also being able to evaluate the benefits, but also some of the limitations and challenges of the tools that some of the tools we'll discuss today. Okay, like Tom said, we'll have some time for questions at the end, but again, please use the chat and feel free to have some back channel chatting with our colleagues here as well. Okay, So we are going to go all the way back to fall of 2024, which is actually almost 2 years ago now, which is crazy. So take a moment and think about fall of 2024, what your institution looked like, what you were doing. Maybe you were even in a different role or doing something totally different, but just take a moment to think about that. So the AI sort of hype cycle was happening. It was there. And on our team, we wanted to test these tools in a real world scenario, or as real world as we could get. So after some discussion amongst the team, we decided to do that with one of our courses that's called Effective Online Pedagogy. On the slide now is just a screenshot from the homepage, but we'll go look at the course site in just a moment to give you an idea. So because we were in these early stages of discovery, we thought who better to experiment on than ourselves. So we experimented on ourselves, and we did, though, have a faculty partner, a friend of the office, if you will, hailing from the math department, who was involved, kind of served as a sounding board for us, kept us grounded. You know, could we actually do this? Is this a good idea? How do you perceive this? Things like that. Fast forward to 2026. I mean, now this sort of AI collaboration that I'm going to talk about today is commonplace now on our team. Very normal. But when we started this, when we kicked off this process in the fall of 2024, it really felt like a total experiment in a sandbox. I remember sitting in a conference room with most of our team, just like, what should we do? Right? Like kind of looking at each other like, everything from like, I'm not very good at prompting yet to, oh, look at this cool thing that just happened. But we did treat this like a formal high priority project. Like I said, we sat in a room together. We dedicated time to this to figure out where to start. And that'll be, a theme today, that to innovate, you have to dedicate the time to do it. This innovation doesn't happen on the margins when you already have a really busy team and schedule. Okay. And just before we press on too far, I will go ahead and just do a quick kind of scroll through the Canvas site. This is a 10-week, 1-credit course, again, on effective online pedagogy, and it is taught in person. So that's something to keep in mind as we discuss some of the things we tried and the things that we did. And this is taught by one of my colleagues, Kwang Chen Su. All right. Oop, I just clicked on the same thing. Sorry, everybody. Okay, so let's start with learning design. The very first thing we did was just make a custom learning design assistant in ChatGPT called GPT. This in of itself took a lot of time, way more time than I thought it would. So if this is something you haven't done yet and you're thinking about doing this, estimate some more time for just developing it, for testing it, and things like that. This would be, now we're using Gemini Gems more, or I think these in Copilot, I think are called agents, I think. But somebody can correct me on that in the chat. So again, this in of itself, it took a lot of time. But once we got our LD assistant to a point where it was helpful and it was testing fine, it helped us generate things like course descriptions, topics, module or weekly sequencing, learning objectives, all of these sort of foundational pieces of the course design. On the screen now is just one small snippet of a quick, back and forth with the GPT for getting the description into a good spot, giving it an example, giving it some other information. And it actually did give me a good description that, of course, we iterated on. And more on that, a lot of this was highly iterative. So the AI didn't replace us. It felt like having a brilliant intern who never sleeps And because they don't sleep, they hallucinate sometimes. um, so lots of editing. I see some questions in the chat about where did the knowledge come from for the LD assistant. So that came from us. We were giving it resources that we use that we know are reliable, things like theory and things like SOPs, things of that nature. And we did learn at our first go round, we gave it too much information. So you kind of have to strike a balance of what's enough, what's too much, what's not enough, things like that. So again, this took some testing. Okay. The other thing we use this for, this was probably the most fascinating thing I think we did that I would have never thought to do on my own. This is a credit to the team, that we use the GPT to run an alignment check. So it had our course goals, it had our weekly objectives, things like that. And we, again, this is just a quick sort of screenshot of an example of part of one of the conversations saying, you know, testing it, which outcomes do you think this objective aligns with? Right? Or what, and what was really, this is just one example of the way we did this. This probably, just this took 2 or 3 weeks. You know, we met for an hour or so every week, and we really did a lot of this together because we wanted to be able to sit next to each other. And I wanted to be able to look at my colleagues and be like, that's weird that it said that, right? What do you think of that? So again, the feedback was surprising. For some of the weekly modules, it caught gaps that we totally missed. It challenged us in some ways. In other weeks, the feedback at first, you know, we thought, let's think about it, you know, word salad type of stuff that it was giving back to us. And then we were able to say, no, let's stand in our design. I think we made the right decision. That's not right. I think we're right here. So being able to stand in our own design strong and stand strong was really good for even just our team culture and collaborating as well. Okay. I want to take a moment. I've talked a lot. I want to take a moment for you all to, we're just going to do a quick like yes or no reaction, just to see how people are feeling or what people are using. I know not everyone in the room is a learning designer, so feel free to not answer. Oh, I was going to have us use reaction buttons, but the chat is fine. You pick whatever you want to do. Okay, yes. So cool. Some of us have used an alignment check in this way before. Someone asked if Claude is a better option. Perhaps it might be. Okay, some yeses, some nos. Let me scroll up to the top here. Some ideas about doing this. Yeah. This is one thing too that I, you know, the descriptions and the learning objectives and the more foundational pieces, I think were easier for us to integrate into our workflows, where this alignment check, just because of it took a lot of time, but the feedback was very valuable. But I will admit, I don't do this for every single project. And yeah, Judy, great for pedagogical discussion and being able to kind of bounce ideas back and forth in this way. There's a question in here that someone else responded to about how did you get the information? How did you get the information out of the course to give it the information? So I think you mean like, how did we feed the GPT information about the course? All just manually, really, like in the prompting itself. Okay. I love all this chatter in chat. Great question too about comparing it to Ignite AI. I don't know what the engine for Ignite AI is. And I also know, you know, like our institution, we don't have Ignite AI within our Canvas, just because of institutional licensing and tiers and all of that fun stuff. But yeah, what possibilities are there now in 2026? So, okay, I have another question for you all. Again, I know you're not all learning designers. You're not all, wait, don't type it yet. Don't type it yet. Let's do a waterfall or a ready, set, go, it's sometimes called. So go ahead and start drafting this now. And if you're not a learning designer, go ahead and tailor it to how you are using it for your work in course design. But what are you doing? And we'll take a minute to draft, and then we'll let them all wait for my go, and we'll let them all come in. For what it's worth, there's some chatter in the chat about Claude becoming less smart. Okay, let's go ahead and go. Some people are starting to drop some things in there. Yeah, alt text. Yeah. Thought partner. Interesting question. Okay. Course objectives, breaking down into mod. Yep. Good stuff. Good stuff. Good stuff. Oh, designing web pages. That's interesting. Cool. Right. Thank you all for getting in there. I appreciate it. And definitely invite you all to kind of scroll through those for sure. Rubrics, yes. I know there was some pre-registration questions about agents, things like Claude Cowork. There were some questions about, actually, let me look at my list here really quick, because I typed them out here. Yeah, just on the topic of agents, this is not something our team is doing yet, not at scale and not comfortably. We're kind of maybe dipping our toes in. But I'm working on a course right now with a faculty member called Responsible and Ethical AI. And the course ran in fall of 2025, and it's running again in the fall of 2026. And we're adding some videos and some content about agentic AI. And one thing that struck me in the faculty member script was something about, with generative AI, in the context of our conversation, with generative AI, you might mess up one or two course descriptions. With agentic AI, you might mess up 100 or whatever you task it with, right? The flip side of that is it might do a great job on 100, but we're not confident enough yet, at least on our team. So, okay, let's press on. Thanks everybody for your participation in the chat, and keep taking advantage of, just the collective wisdom in the group. Okay, we're going to talk next about, just to close the loop on the alignment check. I'm laughing because this is all made up, but I kept it in here because it just tickled me pink. When you may or may not have seen it on my title slide, there's a little disclaimer that I did use something called Google AI Studio to just help me draft up these slides. I gave it my speaking outline and some sections that I scripted out, drafted up some slides, and it threw this in there. I said, what the heck is that? But all to say, related to the agent, not that that's an agent, but related to that conversation, like, we just can't rely on it too much, even still. So I just thought that was funny. If you're watching the recording and you see that, that's not real. Okay, let's talk about media production. So while the learning designers, myself and my colleagues, were really laying these foundational pieces of the course, our media team was doing some of their own experimenting and also kind of waiting for us, because we work almost lockstep, and we work together very closely. So they use generative tools to do things like script writing. They did like even background music and things like that, and also asset drafting. So things like title course cards. The one on the screen is an example of one they felt pretty good about that really didn't take a whole lot of effort. We found that the AI generated scripts definitely required a human's touch. That's no surprise to anyone. But more often than not, sorry, I'm laughing at the chat. I should not look at that. It's distracting me. But we found more often than not starting with a script and starting with something was way more beneficial than just staring at a blank screen, for our instructors too. And this is drawing from experiences since this initial accelerated course design as well. But there were a few scripts that, again, back in 2024, we were giving it some examples. We were giving it sort of rough outlines. This is about how long we want the video to be. These are some of the main points. sometimes, again, it would just be, not good. And we would just start anew. So kind of knowing when to call it as well. Sometimes starting fresh can be the better option as well. Okay, but the biggest takeaway, the biggest win for the media production on this project was using HeyGen. And I'm going to play an example now. It worked fine when Tom and I tested it with connection and sound and all of that stuff. But I'm going to go ahead and play a little snippet of a video from our course homepage now, and then we'll look at we'll talk about this more. And I'll start playing it, and if we could just get a couple heads up or thumbs up that you can hear it.
Accomplish online. By the end of this course, you will not only be equipped with knowledge and strategies, but also with the confidence to create impactful online learning experiences. Oh, and one more exciting thing before we send you off to your first learning module. The videos in this course will be presented by my AI avatar. I hope you enjoy this fun addition as part of the learning journey. Now, if you're wondering what that means, let me explain. My avatar is a digital version of me. Hello, I'll be guiding you through the videos in this course, delivering the same engaging content with a modern twist. I'm here to make learning fun, accessible, and interactive. I've been created to bring you the same content, tone, and energy that your instructor would in person. Think of me as a...
Okay, so the first little bit of that clip is E, my wonderful colleague E, in our studio, and we use that footage to feed into HeyGen. But you can see the difference there. We kind of introduce the avatar in the video itself, which also serves another purpose as being, this is what this is in this course, and this is how we're using it, a bit of a transparency disclaimer statement there. So a little bit more on, again, this is 2024. So some of you may already be doing this. 2 years ago, once we felt good about our scripts, E and our colleagues, we went down to the studio in the basement, actually. Go down to the basement. It's in the basement in our building. And she filmed a couple minutes of audio and high quality video. And we were then able to use that video to generate new video with HeyGen. So, and we'll go look at HeyGen in a minute if you're not familiar. So in theory, this solves, at least for our team, and I don't know about your teams, but a really big bottleneck for us sometimes is just instructor availability, right? Like our instructors are here, there, and everywhere. This summer, for example, we've got a lot of things that we want to, that we need folks on camera for, and they're in London and they're in Rome and they're all over the world doing all sorts of great stuff. So you can imagine that if a faculty member only needs to record once, sometime it could be in our studio. It could even just be recording their own voice and sending us a recording like this, right? The better quality footage you give it and sound you give it, obviously the better output you're going to get, just like with a prompt. But you can imagine that if all we need then are scripts and text, and then generate all these videos, how the scaling potential is massive. So now, was it perfect? It's not perfect. And this first clip I played, you can, see E, the real E, and how she talks and moves and things like that. And I'm sure you all noticed, oh, obviously this is an avatar now, right? I know we also definitely noticed, some quirks with her cadence of speech and with her accent and things like that. But we pressed on. We used the avatar in every week's module overview video. So let's see. I'll just play another video quickly, and then we'll go look at HeyGen. And I want to be mindful of time as well. Okay, that took some doing.
Face-to-face teaching. There's the ability to adapt on the fly. Moments all happen.
she
If
go?
you're less
There
familiar
she
with
is.
online teaching, you might be wondering, how does teaching online compare to teaching face-to-face? In this video, we'll compare some of the benefits and challenges of both approaches.
Okay. So that is, again, this is the final version that lives in the course itself. To give you just a little bit of an idea of how HeyGen works, again, I'm not going to do a full technical demo. We just simply don't have the time, and that wasn't what today's focus was really for, but it's pretty user friendly, which is a big plus. The other night when I was prepping for this presentation, I gave HeyGen the headshot we used for the poster that you saw when you registered, and I recorded like a minute, not even a minute probably, of just a random script that HeyGen gave me, and within 5 minutes, it generated something for me. So I would invite you. My team does have a license, but all this is just a free account. Look over the agreements and things like that. Again, the ethics of all of this and all of that stuff is another conversation, an important conversation. The thumbnail's very scary, but the video itself is not horrible.
My wonderful colleague, Yi, spent time, we're calling it. In theory, this solves.
Okay, again, not great, but it took me like 3 minutes. So, I just happened to see a question here about cloning voices in HeyGen, and yes, you can. I actually am pretty sure that 11 Labs and HeyGen, they use 11 Labs to clone the voice itself. And thank you all to you all who are answering questions about in the chat. I see you, and I appreciate that. Okay. Again, want to be cognizant of time. So I would be remiss if I didn't talk about some student perceptions and some other pedagogical considerations. So the course just completed its second run. And I do not have hard data. I want to say that right now. Anecdotally, we have had, our students have perceived this well. That is a win. But our long-term, data on long-term learning outcomes and data on student satisfaction regarding AI, this is sort of emerging. So the jury's still out, but our initial, reception, at least on our campus, was positive and encouraging. And it's worth keeping in mind that this is a face-to-face course. So, you might make different decisions based on if your course is fully asynchronous or if your course is online but with a synchronous component, right? So doing that sort of cost-benefit analysis for your own use case, your institution, and your team's needs as well is really important. Okay. The big head takeaway, though, is that experimenting in this way was really valuable for our team. So before we press on, I might just pause here. Okay. I am going to press on, actually. We'll skip that. Okay, just real quick on project management. So our project managers were in the room. They were with us this whole time. They were experimenting with drafting different administrative agreements, project charters, reviewing those, summarizing those, and also experimenting with milestones and scheduling and timelines and note taking and all of those amazing things that our project managers do for us that I admittedly have gotten worse at because I'm spoiled by having such a great team. So some lessons learned here in our last couple minutes. Time is the ultimate currency. And again, this is nothing groundbreaking. You all probably know this and realize this. It's carving out the time, but this dedicated collaborative time for our team to play with these tools and have these conversations, I think has changed also the culture of our team and how we experiment and time. What's that? I see in the chat. Yeah. Time, money. What are those things? Anyway, The other big takeaway is lowering these initial stakes. So again, nothing groundbreaking here, but we were able to have an authentic project, but we knew that if we messed it up, it was not our, intro to calculus course with over 1,000 students or something like that. So that was a big help as we experimented. This one, using AI and using these tools, it made some of the work go faster. But you all have experimented with these, and probably maybe you feel similarly. Let us know. If you're not careful, using these tools can also eat up even more time in some ways. So, back to I mentioned with the script writing, like knowing when to call it, knowing when you just have AI slop and you just need to start over. But it did, I say breadth over speed here because it made the process significantly less taxing, but it also allowed us to explore a wider breadth of ideas without being so burnt out and without, dedicating so many resources to it. Okay. And then the last one here, and there were some pre-registration questions about AI transparency and, disclosure statements and things like that. This was a huge one we learned from this project. Now, the course content itself was pedagogically related, so it made it a lot easier for us to do and feel good about that in this course because it was a teaching moment. It was part of the course in this way. But moving beyond this experiment into 2025 and 2026 and present day, this is something that our team is really working hard to do, whether we just use AI for transcripts in a different language. There's a transparency or disclosure statement of where those transcript download buttons are. Whether, depending on the degree it is used in the course, a syllabus statement, something on Canvas, like all of those things. So where are we going? Where are we headed? So again, this was way back in 2024. It's been fun to revisit and look at our notes that we took from this time. And I'm glad we took those notes. And that's a tip for you all. If you're doing this with your teams, it might feel strange to take notes and have a tool log and do all of these things. But to be able to reflect and tell the story, that's been really valuable. So we haven't stopped exploring. Some of the recent things that we've done on the team are we've been engaging in quarterly challenges, just internal challenges, learning designers, our media team, our project managers. Our learning designers did this for the first time in November of 2025. And I can actually drop this in the chat if it's helpful for anyone. One second. We looked at one of MIT's open courseware courses and looked at learning materials and just reviewed and analyzed everything in that course, and then proposed a strategic AI-enabled intervention to solve it. So again, something authentic, lower stakes. There was dedicated time to work on it, which has been really valuable. We've also partnered with our AI enablement team on our campus, who they do something called an AI accelerator. And they come in and it's somebody not on your team, right? So like fresh eyes, fresh perspective, talking with you about what sorts of things take up a lot of time for your team, but they're simple. And maybe we can come up with solutions. So we're working with them now to do things like custom Gemini gems that we can deploy to faculty and reference and workshops and things like that. We're working really hard to get it to a point where we can put it on our website. But we just finished some testing and we're like, not yet, not quite yet. So, but those are some of the things we're doing, as well as a new like learner analytics and data project. So, all right, let me throw up the very official questions and discussion slide. Thank you again, everyone, for listening and for joining us and all the action in the chat. And yeah, let's open it up. Any successes, horror stories, questions, I'll do my best to answer, and also, again, invite the collective wisdom of the group.